So Liberty Hangout has a brand new video. We haven't checked in on Kaitlin in a while. I guess she's covering some recent military ads or something that she thinks make the military look weak. So let's take a look.
Party that cried for 4 years that Donald Trump is a fascist is now using the military to intimidate people like you and me. I'm going to ask the question that every Republican is thinking, but has been too afraid to ask. What is even the point of us having a military anymore? The reason I ask this...
Agree. Abolish the military. Hashtag defund the military. Now, Kaitlin, the point of having a military ideally would be to defend one's country against outside threats. Unfortunately, in the United States, we take preemptive action quite often, which ends up leading to negative outcomes for the vast majority of people on both sides, and then, unfortunately, a few people profit, and it's just bad for everyone.
Question is because it seems like the military no longer serves to protect and defend the Constitution. The military serves to protect the Democrat Party.
Did she think this literally 5 months ago when Trump was president? No? Weird. Quick turnaround, huh?
And their woke ideology. The institution that...
Because when I think woke ideology, I think the United States military. Nothing's woker than taking a drone and destroying a wedding or hospital. Pyromancer says, but Hannah, we're gonna need that military for when the Canadians invade. I guess so. Nick says, bitch, you hate the Constitution, so STFU, poop girl.
We've been told for centuries has fought for our freedom, has now turned our soldiers into pawns to fight for their communist agenda.
Communist agenda? Is that on the bingo card? Also, Kaitlin, I don't know who told you that the military fights for your freedom, but they were lying to you. Sorry. Mike Mack says, Kaitlin versus Peter on who owns the military. Oh, I'd love to see that. And then Nova4 says, yas, drone queen. Verboten, thanks for subscribing for 4 months.
And it doesn't seem like our leaders in Washington, D.C. have any interest in taking our armed forces seriously. We went from having the most elite military force that once flexed its might in 2 world wars.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Again, with the World War II and World War I fetishism. It's been almost a century, Kaitlin. Get over it. Neither of us were alive. Your parents and my parents weren't even alive. Chill out.
To literal social justice warriors that want to turn our soldiers into promiscuous gender-fluid communists.
Yep, that's the dream. Gender-fluid communist military.
It begins
Mandatory pride parades every week.
in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms. Although I had a fairly typical childhood, I also marched for equality.
I would imagine videos like this, and we also saw something similar with, oh gosh, was it the FBI? No, was it the CIA or the FBI? I don't remember, but recently there was also a recruitment video from the CIA or the FBI, which also went into a lot of identity stuff. CIA, thank you. Where it was like a woman who I think was Hispanic, and she was like, oh, I did all these things, and I have a daughter or a son, this is all the stuff I do. And I imagine a lot of this is coming out of the fact that young people who are the primary recruits for the armed forces and the intelligence communities have a pretty negative view of the United States military, considering what the United States military has been up to literally our entire lives, and even before then, but you know, it's just more out in the open than it ever has been. So I imagine the view of the United States military is profoundly negative amongst younger generations like Gen Z and even, I don't want to say Gen Alpha, because I think they're like 10 years old right now, but Gen Z and younger millennials see the military as a pretty not great thing. And I imagine they're trying to turn that around by involving things that younger people do tend to like, which is like, gay rights. Like, hey, isn't that a good thing? So they're trying to change the military's image by saying, we're not a giant force of destruction that goes around and imposes American will through the might of our military. We're just made up of individual people like you who march in pride parades. And that's, it's a recruiting technique. Towing24 says, Kaitlin, unless you want the army to create regime change to depose the genocidal maniacs in Israel, then shut your mouth. Pyromancer says maybe she needs to watch the cringy army ad that passes off roles as video game classes. Oh god, that must exist, doesn't it? Yikes. Princess Amelia says the military wants you to know that no matter who you are and no matter who your parents are, you too can support American imperialism. And Mike Mack says, didn't she want the Trump to use the military to stop protests in Chicago and close down colleges? Yeah, she's a fascist. I should say she's a monarchist, or as I like to call that, a fascist. Tucker White says, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, it doesn't matter if you're black, gay, or even a smurf. If you all have the upper body strength and need for college money, you too can kill brown people in the Middle East for the glory of Lockheed Martin. I mean, the glory of freedom. And Stephen J. Neptune Man says, I doubt Kaitlin was happy the U.S. won World War II.
I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age, but she tapped into my family's pride, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and after meeting with an army recruiter, I found it.
Ugh, she was the top of her class and then she went into the military? That's sad.
A way to prove my inner strength, and maybe shatter.
She did the 3-point superhero landing. Because being in the military is the same as being an Avenger, right, kids? You like that, right? Like Thor playing Fortnite. You want to floss? We're hip with the kids, aren't we?
Some stereotypes along the way.
Wow, what strong woman wouldn't want to join the army and kiss girls after seeing that? And oddly, these anti-fascist heroes not only want our military to have complete allegiance to our dear leader, but also want...
It's generally good for the United States military to listen to the commander-in-chief, since that is the constitutional role of the president, one of them to be the commander-in-chief of the military. Yeah, as long as they're not giving unlawful orders.
Enlistment to be based on race, which sounds a lot like what this really bad dude in Germany once did.
Reminder that Kaitlin Bennett doesn't like democracy, and I don't mean that as an accusation, I mean that as a statement of fact. She has literally talked about how she thinks democracy was a bad idea and that women shouldn't get the right to vote. Nick says, again, shit girl, you wanted the military to have complete alliance to Trump. And then Pyromancer says, the cringe army ad in question. Oh no. And then Tucker White says, I won't lie, if I wasn't a jaded, cynical bastard, that cutie patootie might have swayed me. Oh god, don't fall for that shit. Logarth says, and then, a year in, she gets redacted and her CO ignores it and she washes out due to PTSD after her redacted stays assigned at the post and lies about her on reviews as retribution. Yikes. Oh yeah, I think I did see this. Healer. Yeah. Yikerinos.
This latest story that's been breaking the news this week has been just the tip of the iceberg. Just a few days ago, a lieutenant colonel in the Space Force blew the whistle.
The Space Force. Daddy Sume says, unironically, the Dune series has those women soldiers in a solely women's peacekeeping religious police force army. The God Emperor of Dune has them use their sexuality and motherly nature to be better peacekeeping forces than testosterone-driven dude bros, communist, promiscuous, gender-fluid soldiers. He also uses them to grab genetic seed from the bloodlines he wants to add to his breeding program. Dune sounds dumb. No offense.
On the increased prevalence of Marxist ideology being put.
Marxist ideology, aka, hey, maybe people get treated differently based on their race, unfortunately. Marxism!
Pushed by the US military. And guess what happened to him? He got fired. The story just broke on military.com on May 15th, and his termination probably proves him right.
If I get fired from McDonald's for saying that McDonald's is made out of people, that must mean I was right. It can't just be that I was spreading false information. It must be that the Big Macs are made of people. Logarth says, Dune is the best kind of 1960s sci-fi dumb, and Daddy Sume says, it's not. I'm leaving out a lot of context. If you say so.
Before I dive more into this, I wanted to remind you guys real quick that for just $5 a month, you can gain access to my private Facebook group when you sign up at patreon.com/Kaitlin Bennett, or receive other cool perks such as autographed photos in the mail from yours truly. The story from military.com starts, a commander of a U.S. Space Force unit tasked with detecting ballistic missile launches has been fired for comments made during a podcast promoting his new book, which claims Marxist ideologies are becoming prevalent in the U.S. military.
So he's an active duty military individual who decided to not only espouse political opinions in public, but also wrote a book about them? That seems like a bad idea. Oh god, I'm getting follow-botted. I hate that shit. Krizia with 50 bits says, Dune isn't really dumb, it's just a bit of a weird commentary on civilization's tendency towards feudalism. Okay. Fish Speaker, this is from Dune, I guess. The Fish Speakers were an army created during the rule of God Emperor Leto Atreides II. Nope. See, that's the kind of shit that immediately turns me off to your sci-fi universe. Pyromancer says, donate enough and a turd encased in resin.
Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer, commander of 11...
I hate getting follow-botted, though, because I do like to keep track of how many followers I have, and that always inflates the number for like a week until the bots get removed, and they always get removed, which is good. But it always throws off my ability to see how I'm actually doing. I hate that shit.
11th Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado.
What's a follow bot? Basically, they're bots on basically any service, but they also exist on Twitch, that are fake accounts that people pay to follow people. But in order to hide the fact that they're only following accounts that, like, pay them, they'll go and they'll have their bot accounts also follow other random streamers to make it seem more random who they're following. So occasionally, if you're relatively high up in the listing on whatever category you're on, like I tend to be decently on Just Chatting up there because I get like 300 to 400 people watching usually. Sometimes I'll get hit with it and I'll all of a sudden get like several hundred follows all at once. How can I tell? It's because it's hundreds of follows all in the span of like 3 seconds. Which just does not happen naturally. I guess unless you were rated by someone who had, you know, tens and tens of thousands of followers or people watching. But yeah, it's just annoying. Tucker White says, Kaitlin, anybody can make unproven claims. I'll do it right now. Hey, everyone. Did you know that Hannah once dropped a nuclear bomb on a planet in the Andromeda Galaxy because her date stiffed her on the bill? Don't tell people that. I told that to you in confidence. Nenekins, thanks for 100 bits, and Pyromancer says, just realize I'm stream boss for once and I'm getting chunked by bots. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Was relieved from his post Friday by Lieutenant General Stephen Whitting, the head of Space Operations Command, over a loss of confidence in his ability to lead, Military.com has exclusively learned. The article goes on, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on February 5th ordered all military services to observe one-day stand-down on extremism in the ranks. As part of his stand-down, Lohmeyer said he was given a booklet that cited the Jan 6 riot as an example of extremism, but did not mention the civil disobedience and destruction of property that took place following the death of George Floyd.
Because there are known military members, both veterans and active duty military personnel who were involved in January 6th. That's why they're talking about that as an example.
Lohmeyer also accused the Pentagon press secretary of saying that there are too many white pilots. How is that not racist? Can you imagine if he was being accused of saying there are too many black pilots? But because they say it about white pilots, that makes it a-okay. For the military,
because they're talking about there not being enough. Again, we all make fun of the more female drone pilots, but like that's basically what they're talking about here. Is they think that like certain groups of people are being advantaged in some way. I don't know the numbers on that. Colston says the author of Dune was a horny dude. The final arc of the series is the protagonists fighting against a matriarchal empire that enslaves their populations through making them addicted to sex. That's bizarre.
to even look at their ranks in terms of color and not in terms of who can do the best job at defending our
That's the point that they're making, though, Kaitlin, is that they think it's being advantaged towards white people as opposed to the best candidates for the job. That's the whole point.
Nation when it comes under attack is so disgusting and disrespectful to all the soldiers who have died on the battlefield, and a huge slap in the face to the
Kaitlin, you literally want the monarchy to return. I do not care what you think about the military because you don't actually care about them.
taxpayers who just want the military to be able to protect our country. But clearly that's not what the military is for anymore. The fact that this line of thinking is penetrating our military should frighten all of you. And I have a lot that I want to say about this, but as you know, I'm very limited with what I can say here on social media, so head on over to libertyhangout.tv if you want to see my full, uncensored opinions about this, along with hundreds of other episodes where I talk about topics too spicy for YouTube.
We still gotta look at that at some point. It's probably gonna be real bad. Stephen J. Neptune Man says, kinda sad that in May of 2021, Poop Girl still proudly displays her Trump picture and hat, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty cringe. Tucker White says, Kaitlin, two things. Number one, that's an asinine conflation. Two, people were arrested for looting and rioting. You can find police records of it. What do you not understand about that? Woman in a recorded video that I'm yelling at while watching a live stream. Daddy Sume says, not quite. He actually showed how pointless it was because they turned into addicts and were useless eventually. They could never achieve the next high and were strung out. Yeah, this sci-fi does not sound good to me. One Speedy Yoshi says, Poop Girl, stop being a Nazi Holocaust denier challenge.
The article continues, the beginning chapters of his book explore the history and foundation of the U.S. and how critical race theory, a study of how race and racism impact or are impacted by social and economic power structures and institutions, plays a role. The diversity, inclusion, and equity industry and the trainings we are receiving in the military is rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism. Said, adding it should be seen as a
Define Marxism Challenge 2021.
a warning sign. So the types of lessons your kids are receiving in school about how white people need to feel ashamed of their heritage and pay reparations.
That's literally not what gets taught to children. Tucker White says citation needed, and Daddy Sume says it's a minor thing. It only comes into play at one point and it's not really important. I'd suggest giving it a look, Hannah. It's honestly really good sci-fi, if only just reading the first 3 books.
For crimes they never committed are now being taught to the military? Why does this have any place on the battlefield? How is that supposed to help them do their job? Unless, of course, their job is now to view people like us as their enemies instead of actual terrorists. And
Kaitlin, stop invading the Capitol and you'll stop being treated like a terrorist. I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about, you know, the kind of people you'll like. Tucker White says, and you're just taking these claims at face value, Kaitlin.
That's why all of this is so freaky. Critical race
Hey, Cass.
theory contributes nothing to their jobs unless it becomes part of their job. The story concludes, leaders may be afraid if they don't get on board with diversity training. They will face scrutiny or might not get promoted, he said.
Oh, I guess you should probably do your job then. Princess Amelia says, why do you have so many Dune fans in your chat, Hannah? I don't know.
Adding that liberal ideas are welcomed, whereas ideas from more conservative voices are criticized or silenced.
Have you considered that conservative ideas are stupid and bad?
And what's sad about this entire situation is that conservatives are the ones who support the military.
Not not really. You support them as, like, a tool, but you don't really give a shit about veterans at all. And I don't like the military. I don't like the military as it currently functions. But I do think people who are veterans deserve health care and all the psychological support that they need. But Republicans keep voting against that stuff, so... Kaitlin also, again, like I've said, is anti-democracy, so I don't know why she even pretends to give a shit about the military protecting our freedoms, because she doesn't even like our freedoms. She wants to return to a monarchy. Literally. Tucker White says, someone want to tell her about the days when black people were segregated even in the military? Seriously, the Pentagon was built with segregation in mind. Yeah, they have, like, double bathrooms. Morak Ben Eoth says, listen, Dune art is good. Or, Dune is art. God Empress Marie has spoken. Ugh.
And yet, they're the ones either being told they have no place or that they have to be silent. But the bigger implication of this story is something that we already knew before this whistleblower even came out. And that is that the police and the military no longer serve to protect you, but to intimidate and persecute you for disagreeing with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi.
Amazing that the entirety of the police and military completely switched political alignment on January 20th at noon. That's impressive coordination.
The party that cried for 4 years that Donald Trump is a fascist is now using the military to intimidate people like you and me.
No, not a thing. The military being taught, hey, consider the impact that history has had on racial relations between people in the United States and in the military in particular, is not you being demonized. Unless you know you're a racist piece of shit, which maybe she does, in which case, maybe stop being that.
It's been 4 months since January, and the National Guard is still in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and since January, some other person tried to drive a car into some area. I don't even remember what it was. One Speedy Yoshi says, does someone want to tell her the police and the military never wanted to serve us? Only rich and white people. I'm a black, gay, autistic. They don't want to serve me. And then Tucker White says, did she forget that Trump threatened to turn the military on Americans just last year? She didn't forget. She's a fascist. Hydrate. Okay.
try and scare Trump supporters out of coming to the city. And Democrats are trying to make their occupation permanent. I don't know about you guys, but I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats called Trump a dictator for requesting the National Guard in DC for a few days when Black Lives Matter was burning churches, tearing down statues, and attacking Secret Service in front of the White House. But hey, now that it's this guy that's the president.
And the kids used to come up and reach into the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again.
A permanent military dictatorship is cool and progressive. And while we're on the topic of the seriousness of the military, remember when the Army lowered their fitness standards to help more women make it into the military? And conservatives criticized this for being goofy? Well, now that it's been 7 months since they rolled out their new standards, let's check back in for an update to see how the ladies have been doing. Nearly half of female soldiers still failing new Army fitness tests, while males pass easily.
I don't give a shit about military politics like this.
So I guess lowering their standards didn't help that much. But I also love how this demonstrates that men and women are clearly different, contrary to what the military will probably soon teach their soldiers. But hey, who cares about standards when the few women who do make it through boot camp can now have ponytails, nail polish, and earrings? I love it. That is so progressive. But
what's your issue with it, Kaitlin? Like, how is that hurting them is the question I'm basically saying. Again, I don't really care about inter-military politics outside of course, like, situations of assault or whatever. That's a big deal. But, like, stuff like this, I don't really care. Why are you against that? Aren't you usually, like, pro-femininity or whatever, and you consider traditionally feminine things to be feminine? So would you not think that's good, or... Pyromancer says it hurts them because change bad.
Until the military lets men have ponytails, nail polish, and earrings, I'm just going to assume that they're
Okay, then do that. I don't care.
bigoted and transphobic. And those are the worst things to be.
Being bigoted and transphobic are definitely not good things to be. Those and racism are pretty high up there. Yeah.
Any military generals are watching this, please do that. It will definitely make our military be taken more seriously by our enemies. They'll be
I don't really give a shit what ISIS or some Russian soldier somewhere thinks of the United States military. I don't care.
quivering in their boots when they see our brave men running at them in high heels on the battlefield.
Ah, yes, the very realistic standard of wearing high heels on the battlefield. Logarth says, that scared the heck out of Russians, at least. You're probably right. Lord Necro JZ says, I'm really not a fan of non-veterans commenting on military standard. Yeah. Pyromancer says, because Trump certainly made other countries take us more seriously.
So now that we've covered all that, I want to ask the same question I did in the beginning. What is even the point of us having a military anymore? So long as the Democrats are in power, it will never be the same military you've known and loved. It will never merit the same respect that our troops of old used to. It's sad to have to admit, but not only is our country gone, but so are the institutions we once held sacred.
All right, you heard it here first. Based Kaitlin Bennett says defund the military. Pyromancer says, because Trump certainly made... Oh, I already read that one. Sorry.
As you guys can see, as I
Is that it? That's the end of the video?
promised you, we were back out on the road, doing interviews, talking to people, but I need you guys to support me at patreon.com/Kaitlin Bennett.
Jesus Christ, Kaitlin.
My name is...
Even by Kaitlin's standards, that video felt a little lazy. What are you gonna do?